Hello and welcome to Party Finder Terms Explained. This is a series where I, Toka, will go over terms you'll commonly see in Party Finder postings in Final Fantasy XIV and explain what they mean so you can know exactly what you're getting into. Today, we'll be going over the first phase of the Omega Protocol Ultimate, the latest Ultimate level encounter introduced in patch 6.31. Why only phase 1? Well, as of recording this, there have not been any groups that have successfully cleared the encounter, and Party Finder groups in particular are just starting to make it into the second phase, so even for the next phase, strats are still developing. With that said, let's get into it. Probably the most important thing you will see listed in most Party Finder descriptions for phase 1 will be what the groups are for the first few mechanics. Usually, this will either be LP or light party groups for everything, or role groups, though some parties may specify one option for one mechanic and the other option for the next, so something like LP Loop and Roll Panto. At the time of recording this, LP groups for everything is the most common, so if it's not mentioned, that should be the assumed plan, but ask before or when you join just to be sure. Loop Program is the first mechanic, where there are 4 rounds of 2 tethers and 2 towers that will happen at the same time, and based on your next in line debuffs, you'll need to take certain things at certain times. Some party finders will even list the order, 3-4-1-2 for tethers and 1-2-3-4 for towers, but since that is the only way to resolve the mechanic, this is thankfully becoming less common. Since for both tethers and towers there are 2 happening at a time, the party has to be divided into the groups I mentioned earlier to decide who will take which. Usually, this means one group, such as Light Party 2 or the DPS group, will take the first tower and tether they find when looking at north to start and going around clockwise, and then Group 1, or the support, aka tank and healer group, will take the first tower and tether they find starting from west and going counterclockwise. The second and really final mechanic in phase 1 is Pantokrator, which will also have next in line debuffs to tell you the order in which you do mechanics. This time though, the next in line debuff tells you at which time you need to be away from the party while a stack mechanic happens. If only one grouping was mentioned in the Party Finder, then this will generally use the same groups that Loop Program did, otherwise just group up as the Party Finder description says. However, there is one problem with this. The next in line debuffs are assigned randomly, so it's possible that 2 people in the same group can have the same number regardless of which of these 2 strategies you're using. Which brings us to the next set of terms you'll see, the flexes. This refers to people who will swap over to act as part of the other group until the end of that mechanic. If it's not mentioned, generally the priority for light party groups will be that the tank flexes if they have the same number as anyone else in their party, the melee flexes if they have the same number as anyone in their party who is not a tank, and the ranged DPS will flex if they have the same as their healer, with healers never flexing. If you see TMR or TMRH flex listed in the Party Finder, that will be what this means. Of course, that doesn't work for role groups because you don't have one of each of those in both groups. Often, parties that do role groups will still assign light parties when they go into the instance, partially to be ready in case they hit phase 2, and also to help set flex priorities. If you encounter this, the flex priority will be the tank or melee in, quote, light party 1 acting as part of the other role group if they have the same number as anyone else in their role group, then that same role in Light Party 2, and then the ranged DPS or healer in Light Party 1, with the ranged or healer in Light Party 2 never flexing. Sometimes this won't be how it works, but in those cases the flex priority will be sorted out explicitly within the instance, so you shouldn't have anything to worry about there. I should also mention that I have seen the rare PF talk about using Dominion, Gorgon, or Snake priorities. Gorgon and Snake both mean the same thing, and they refer to just the standard light party groups and flexes that I've mentioned before. Dominion for Loop Program serves as a reference to P8S Phase 2's final mechanic, where groups are lined up as tank, healer, melee, and then ranged, I believe, looking from west to east, and then looking at the room from west to east, players have that priority for which tower they will take. However, doing things this way does leave you without a tether priority and can be kinda difficult to read in general, so thankfully that has largely fallen out of use already. Moving to some simpler things, you'll also see party finders advertise missile front or back. This is for the Pantokrator mechanic, where within your group, you will either run ahead to be basically chasing the flamethrowers to take your missile far ahead of the group when your next in line happens, or your group will be chasing the flamethrowers, and when it is your turn for next in line, you drop back to take your missile, with the former of these options currently being the more common one. Regardless though, be sure you know which of these your party is doing, because if you take your missile while still stacked with the rest of your group, you will die to the stack mechanic that happens at the same time as every missile, and your light party will die to your missile, knocking them into the wall. After all of the next in line mechanics in Pantokrator have happened, what remains is just a simple spread mechanic. Party finders will sometimes mention doing static spreads, where specific spots will be chosen for players to take these spreads when you go into the instance, and if the party finder doesn't mention it, you can usually assume that this will be the plan. Some groups instead do what we used to call back in O11S the T strat, where you make a T with the spread beams and adjust to people relative to where you were, but this is so uncommon I wasn't even able to find a party finder description mentioning it, so you shouldn't worry about coming across this one too much either. But we've talked a lot about Pantokrator here, and there's still one thing I've left out until now. Where do your groups start, considering the flamethrowers will start in somewhat random locations? Well, thankfully, most party finders will tell you. The most common plan is to send Light Party 1, or the support party if you're doing rolls, to the southwest and go to the closest open area, with Light Party 2, or the DPS party, doing the same in the northeast. The other option is to give each group a marker to start at, and then they go clockwise from that spot until they're in an open area, which you would see posted in a party finder description as G1, 1 clockwise, G2, 3 clockwise, or something along those lines. And with that, you're ready for anything a party finder description will throw at you, at least for early days prog on phase 1. As groups get further, more strats will likely appear for the other phases, and when they do, I'll likely come back to explain those as well. But for now, thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful and want to see more like it, let me know by hitting that like button and subscribing. If there's some term or strat I left out, please be sure to let me know in the comments below. And until next time, take care.